Welcome home, where we provide information, inspiration, and motivator after motivator after motivator here on America's Next. I have Joel Van Kuiken here with me today. How you doing, Joel?
I'm doing well. It's good to be here, Cedric. Really looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Everybody out there who's tuning in, I want to say thank you for your patience. Thank you for bearing with us while we had a technical difficulty. My keyboard stopped working. And you know, sometimes it's maybe I pushed the wrong button or something like that. I pushed all types of buttons, y'all. I got real QWERTY, and there was no way I could get my laptop working properly. So had to get that repaired. Thank you for tuning in. If you're on Roku TV, Apple TV, Android TV, Facebook TV, E360 TV, or YouTube, we appreciate you. Drop comments today. Blow up the chat for Joel. Let him know that we're in the building, and let's give him a warm A&M show. Welcome. Without a further ado, Joel, talk to us about where you're from.
Well, I'm from Michigan, from Western Michigan. I live in Grand Rapids. I've lived here most of my life. I mean, I grew up here, and I lived out of state at various times, lived in China for a while, but ended up coming back here and really making a life here.
What was it like for you growing up in Michigan, and how far did you live from Ann Arbor?
Well, Ann Arbor is about 2 hours away from Grand Rapids. My son actually goes to the University of Michigan. He's a sophomore there. For what it's worth. I know you're an Ohio State fan, but it's academic.
Right.
So, I grew up just outside of Grand Rapids in a small town called Ada. And that was, we moved there in the late 60s. And the town is really, Grand Rapids has really changed. Ada has changed. It's very different from when I grew up there. But, kind of a typical life. I mean, I kind of lived out in the country. I had two older brothers.
Was there any, when you lived out there in what you call the country, do you call it that because there was a lot of farmland around? Did you guys have a farm? Where was the local market? How far away was it?
Well, the market was about a 5 to 10 minute drive. Out in the countryside, not that there were farms. I mean, we just kind of lived in the woods, right? It's kind of a development in the woods. So, now I live kind of closer to the city center of Grand Rapids in kind of a different kind of neighborhood. And, I really enjoy being in a city and being able to walk places and have neighbors closer. But growing up, it was just a little different. I enjoyed it, but I also felt a little isolated, and it kind of shaped me in a way. But I would spend a lot of my time walking through the woods and exploring, kind of riding my bicycle and skinning my knees. Just, being a young, energetic, curious kid.
Sure.
Growing up.
Now, you said that you have siblings. How many siblings do you have?
I've got two older brothers.
Okay. 3 boys. All right.
Yeah.
And somehow you managed to, spend a lot of time in the woods by yourself, kind of, being imaginative, thinking about how your life would be when you got older, and you wanted to live next to the city. What was it that inspired you to want to live closer to the city?
Well, I mean, I can't say that anything necessarily inspired me, but just as I kind of went off to college and started to explore the world a little bit, I lived in Chicago for a while. I lived in Ohio. I went to Denison University for a little while in the 80s for 2 years. And I just found myself kind of gravitating toward, more of this kind of walkable communities.
Okay.
And, there wasn't anything that said, oh, this is where I want to end up. Just kind of how things evolved.
This is one of the greatest aspects of America that I feel we should all appreciate is the infrastructure. It makes you feel like you can go places where when there's a sidewalk everywhere you go, when there is a painted street everywhere you look, there are traffic signals, there are multiple retail opportunities, there's buildings, there's bridges, there's public transportation. you feel like the world is at your fingertips and you feel like you could be a high achiever. And so I think that we should all continue to take advantage of the infrastructure in America. We have one of the greatest infrastructures on planet Earth. And that's what makes America so great, is its infrastructure. Keep that word in mind, everybody, infrastructure, because it's going to come back in this conversation. Now, Joel, what was your relationship like with your parents growing up?
You know, it was good. I mean, you know, it was just kind of a typical American family, I guess. I mean, we had a summer cottage that we would go to. You know, my dad was an insurance agent. You know, and it was just kind of this kind of, you know, three sons, but still kind of a nuclear family.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I mean, you know, I just always had this need to explore.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to get out into the world and discover things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, my parents kind of helped instill that in me,
mm-hmm.
helped me realize that the world was bigger than just our backyard. And
right.
You know, we were very kind of tuned into world issues. I mean, politics, different things that stimulated me and got me interested in kind of this, kind of a global view. So I think my parents did a nice job instilling that. And yeah.
Okay. So, now, your father working in insurance, I'm not sure what type of insurance. What type of insurance did he work in?
Well, I think he sold commercial insurance.
Okay.
I think they had auto insurance, a variety of things.
Okay. The reason I ask that is because people who work in insurance, they get a glimpse into America. They get a glimpse into the commerce of America and really the pulse of what's going on in America. And those could have been some very informative conversations that he might have either had with you or that you might have overheard. People who work in insurance have a lot to say about our country. And so that can't be underestimated, that your dad worked in insurance, because who knows the way that influenced your idea about the world. You know, people who work in insurance, they're great salesmen. I was going to ask you, did your dad ever give you that, you know, that prodigious ink pen and say, sell this to me? Did he ever talk to you about sales?
No, he didn't do that, but he was a very gregarious, you know, an emotional guy.
Okay.
And I think what he instilled in me was, you know, building meaningful relationships and understanding that, yeah, we're always selling. But if we come out and say we're going to sell, that's different than living, you know, building a relationship. So people want to do business with you because they appreciate you, they appreciate your friendship, and they respect you. I think that's a little different than saying, "Oh, I'm gonna sell something," right?
Mm-hmm. What were your social relationships like? Let's say in middle school, and how did they change as you progressed into high school? Given the fact that you were thoughtful about relationships and relationship building.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, man, that was a while ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a lot of friends, but I was always kind of shorter. You know, I was short. It took me longer to kind of grow into my body, I guess. So I always felt maybe a little less, but I was always a bit of a jokester too. I liked to be the class clown, and I appreciated, you know, connecting with my friends. And I have, you know, close friends that I've had all my life. You know, a handful that I went to elementary school with, and, you know, I'm still close with them. But, you know, I always felt like I could navigate from click to click, right? I mean, I didn't feel like I was in one single group. I mean, I felt like I could kind of move among many groups of relationships. But, you know, I didn't know, you know, when you're at that age and you're doing those things, you don't realize what you're up to, you know, and how you're evolving. until you start to kind of look back at it.
That's right.
To think about, yeah, so maybe I did see things a certain way, and then, that did impact how I ended up.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I don't think about that time in my life that often, to be honest, anymore. So
I find it I find it to be one of the most powerful exercises that we can do as adults to reflect on our past, reflect on our childhood. Go back and remember those things because they shake some original parts of us loose that you might find is useful today. When you go back, ladies and gentlemen out there, drop a 1 in the chat if you know that your childhood memories are valuable. Drop a 1 in the chat if you know that your childhood memories are valuable. When you remember them, that's an exercise that it kind of puts your brain back in some of its original, shape. And so when we do stuff like that, it kind of kickstarts our engines all over again. It gets us back remembering the things that we used to be interested in. It gets us thinking about, our ideas, our thoughts, our nuances, and then you know what to do next in the future. And so that's a very important thing. If you would like to stop by here on America's Next Motivator and tell your story, this is the place for you. I'm not just looking for young people. I'm not looking for young college kids. I'm looking for pure grown folks. People like Joel Van Kuiken here. Your relationships, they are helping you to develop a vision about where you can go in life, especially when you build relationships with different groups of people. I like that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
There's big value in building relationships with multiple groups of people. It takes courage, right? If you're an athlete and you go sit down with the people who just play chess, they might look at you like, hey, what are you doing over here? Right? But you find like there's such good conversations to be had. You discover new forms of music. You discover new hobbies. You discover new likes, new dislikes. It makes you a more well-rounded person. And all of this is important because of who you decided to become. We'll get into that in the second half of the show.
Yeah.
But you had an idea that there was more in the world for you, that, there were cities out there where your social ideas, your perspective, your hunger for more were going to be a lot more relevant. Now, did you grow up in a diverse community?
Well, not so much. I mean, when I was younger, but as I got older, I found myself in more diverse communities.
Okay.
But initially, it wasn't so diverse, but we would have exchange students stay with us. We had people from different parts of the world who would come and spend time at our house. So I was always seeking kind of this wisdom from, I guess, diversity, and kind of putting myself in positions where I could get to know people of different ethnicities and different ways of thought.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I did in high school, I started to get into, I was kind of like, what kind of music can I listen to? I was tired of 70s and 80s music. I mean, classic rock and roll, and you hear it everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted something new.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up hearing about a radio show that played reggae music on Sunday nights, in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So I found myself getting into reggae music and actually had a radio show in high school.
Okay.
With a friend of mine who has since passed away, but became a mentor for me and really taught me about reggae and really got me into that music.
Did you ever discover Bob Marley and his legacy? And if you did, how did that impact you in your worldview?
Yeah, I mean, the whole Rastafarianism idea, this social justice, this idea of freedom, this sense of unity, not just Bob Marley, but the whole plethora of reggae artists made a big impact on me and shaped my thinking, and gave me this idea of understanding that, this reggae music was a path to Bad Brains, right. I like Bad Brains too. It was a path to understanding the world.
That's right.
When I went to China, reggae music played a big role in my discovery of China.
How so?
Well, I went there after I graduated from college, and I went there to teach English.
Okay.
And I ended up being a guest on my wife's radio show.
Mm-hmm.
And I played reggae music. And then eventually we had our own radio show together in China.
Okay.
And then I was there in 92. I met her. We produced this show. I was teaching for 2 years. Then we got married in 1994 in China.
You said something very powerful just now, and I think this is a moment where you relate to so many thousands of people across America. Music is a path to understanding the world. That struck a chord with me. I can personally identify with that comment right there. When I was in high school, I had never given rock and roll a shot. I thought that it was a music form that didn't belong to me. Mm-hmm. I felt like it was a music form that was not relevant to my life experience. And I met a young man who played the guitar, and we would talk. I was, mixing socially, and we would talk, and he loved to play the guitar. And, after school, a lot of different kids did different stuff, but he couldn't wait to get home to play his guitar. And so I was like, well, can you recommend some bands to me? Because you keep talking about this rock and roll music. And he gave me a band called Chevelle. And I went home, and the very first song I heard by Chevelle, I just kept replaying it. I could not believe the gravity of music that I had found, the gravity, the emotion, the drive, the lyrics. It was totally incredible. And it really opened up my life experience, because it was like, finally, somebody is screaming for me. Finally, somebody is saying the stuff that I want to say. I never thought of saying it that way, but these guys are talking about it. And so music is definitely a key to understanding life. And I want everybody out there to definitely take that to heart. If you're a young person out there, or if you're a grown person, listen to some music that maybe you haven't heard before. Absolutely. That's absolutely huge. Okay, how'd you get to China? Talk to us.
Well, I graduated from DePaul University in like 1990, 91. And I wasn't really like, I got to go get a job and do this and do that. I wanted to explore, and I had the privilege to, I worked at a bike shop for a while, and then I wanted to see what it was like to teach. Okay. So I decided in 1992 I would go off to China and teach English, because I just got my undergraduate degree in it, and I felt like at that time China was rising, and it seemed like a smart place to go, knowing that China was going to be a big part of our future. And it's true, China has grown exponentially.
That's right.
And understanding Chinese culture and how China fits in the world, and really being cross-cultural, having a cross-cultural family, has been something that has benefited me and changed my worldview.
When you went to China and you saw the infrastructure there versus the infrastructure here in America, how did that influence you? How did that inspire you?
Well, when I went to China, the infrastructure was changing rapidly. I mean, everything, for 10, 15 years, and still now, I was getting on a train, and it would take me 3 hours to get from my city, Hangzhou, to Shanghai. And then I would travel to southwestern China. That was a 55-hour train ride.
Wow.
Yeah. Filled with cigarette smoke and all sorts of things. So it was a real experience. But China's infrastructure is really, leapfrogged. I mean, now you can take a train from Hangzhou to Shanghai. It takes 20 minutes.
Wow. Okay.
So I've traveled on these high-speed trains now. That 55-hour train ride now takes 8 hours.
Right.
So their infrastructure is pretty impressive.
Did you learn anything about the way that they deal with one another socially? Were there any were there any classes? Were there classes? Were there divisions among the people? Did you notice anything socially that you were able to learn from?
Absolutely. It's a Confucian culture.
Okay.
And something about Confucianism, relationships are incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
And there's almost a currency in relationships. It's called guanxi. And you have to build.
Hold on. This is a victorious moment for our entire publics. Let's back it up a little bit.
Okay.
In China, they believe that there is currency in relationships, or did you just make that up?
No, it's true.
There's currency in relationships. Okay, and how do you spell it? What's it called?
Guanxi. Guanxi.
Mm-hmm.
Guanxi is how it's like things need to be, you need to keep things in balance. When I was teaching my students, the relationships they were building with each other were incredibly important because they were going to be relying on each other throughout their lives.
That's right.
So for instance, if I help you out, or if I help a friend of yours out, you would need to then help me out in the future to keep things kind of in balance. And the strength of those relationships allows you to advance in society.
That's right.
And if you haven't built guanxi, you run the risk of kind of being left out of the culture.
Do you see that in America, we are not maintaining balance by having enough guanxi in our relationships and in our social interactions?
Well, in America, we're more of a low context culture. There are low context cultures and high context cultures.
Mm-hmm.
They're not good or bad. One isn't necessarily better than the other. But in a high context culture, we say what we mean. We're very explicit.
Mm-hmm.
In a low context culture, like Confucian cultures in Asia, people don't always say what they mean. Sometimes you have to kind of dig a little deeper. No a number of times can mean yes. Mm-hmm. And it can be very mysterious and inscrutable. Mm-hmm. But it's all built into these relationships that come out of Confucianism.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why this cross-culturally, when we start dealing with other countries, and when a high context culture interacts with a low context culture, there can be a real clash. People really misunderstand the motivations of each other. They're just ways that you act in China, the way that you show reverence for others. It's much deeper. You walk people to the door. You always wave goodbye. You show absolute respect to others in China. Mm-hmm. You should never make someone lose face in China. It's devastating to them. Mm-hmm. So it's just different how we deal with people. And that gets all mixed up in this, in the 2020s, all people are coming from these different perspectives. It's harder to understand their motivations.
I see that in our societies here in America, we have to continue to grow. We have to continue to become a better collective. I think it's a lot of our responsibility. It's not everybody's responsibility, but it's a lot of our responsibility to grow as a collective. And I think it could do big justice for us. In a country where we've got over 440,000 youth in a foster care system. We have people living in pure poverty right here in America. Mm-hmm. We have people who feel disenfranchised. We have people who are providing the evidence to show that they are at an economic or socioeconomic disadvantage right here in America. And we're talking about at least several million people here in America. I know from experience that a lot of people are looking for some of these elements in other cultures. Mm-hmm. People are looking for equity today, equity in relationships, equity in the job market, equity in sports, equity in music, you name it. Everybody's looking for some form of equity. They're looking for some sort of balance in the relationship.
Well, and they want things that are meaningful too.
That's right.
We don't want to just live our lives, and we want to go deeper. We want to understand each other. We want something meaningful
That's
that
right.
we can really latch onto and believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And it isn't about money. It's just about, how do I feel good about the role I'm playing in society?
Mm-hmm.
How do we come together as a community?
That's right.
I think we're in a space where individualism isn't necessarily a bad thing, but when individualism becomes kind of toxic and it's all about, I'm going to get mine and I'm competing, and we deal with scarcity. It's like, if I get mine, then you don't get yours. And that's just not the way to think about it. When I think about evolution, it's not about survival of the fittest. Evolution is about collaboration and
That's
how
right.
everything fits together and works together
Mm-hmm.
and feeds off each other to kind of move us forward.
Mm-hmm. We have to revisit the way that we value life. What are your thoughts about so many young people being in the foster care system today, and the reasons why they're in the system? What are your thoughts about foster care in America?
Well, I mean, my work on the Delta Project is tied into it, but I just think there's lots of trauma. There's generational trauma. And I think kids in foster care are dealing with traumatic experience and mental health issues.
That's right.
Really issues of not belonging, not feeling like they belong.
Mm-hmm.
There's a beautiful African proverb. It goes like this: the child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth.
Mm-hmm.
That really strikes me. The community needs to understand that kids in foster care, kids caught up in the juvenile justice system, need space in the community to allow them to work through some of the issues they're dealing with and support them.
This is huge. This is absolutely huge. This is a victorious moment for our publics, that Joel is making it plain that the young people growing up, and we're not just talking about youth in foster care. Youth in foster care point out the imbalance that exists in our societies, the imbalance of equity, the imbalance of equal enfranchisement. But we got young people who just grew up in a dysfunctional family too. We've got grown folks who never received healing from the traumas that they experienced. And so this is a nationwide issue of people who have trauma that's not been dealt with. And the young people in particular, they need space. They need spaces in America. It needs to be part of our infrastructure of America, a space where young people trying to grow into healthy, effective adults can figure out how to process some of their traumas, their experience, learn how to regulate, self-regulate, and co-regulate in order to become productive members of society. We've got to incorporate that into our American infrastructure. That's absolutely huge. Now, I want to show people a little bit about the Delta Project, which you mentioned. You started this wonderful organization, and it's a very important part of where America is headed. So I'm going to show this video. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to drop a 1 in the chat if you can see and hear the video clearly, because this is phenomenal. Check it out. Just give me 1 second here. I'm going to share my screen, and I want you guys to drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Check this out, everybody. This is their page on YouTube, and watch this video.
Yeah.
Let's get some hearts and likes in the building, everybody. Did you guys see what I saw? Are you feeling that? Did you hear the music? Did you see the energy? Did you see the young men? The young men that look like those in your family and outside in your communities clear across America. Those are the young people that Joel and his co-founders have decided to serve. This is why we're having this conversation about the infrastructure of America, the space that needs to be made in the infrastructure of America for our children, for our young men who are trying to figure out some key questions, some key ideas of how they can become effective adults. We'll be right back with more from Joel Van Kuiken. America's Next Motivator, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. America's Next Motivator, hosted by me, Cedric Riley, sponsored by the Pride Empowerment Network and our viewership. And we're back. Joel, how you feeling out there?
Oh, I'm feeling great. This is awesome.
Absolutely. So now let's talk about the Delta Project. How did you found it? How did you realize the huge need for someone to assist young men in America? And I'm sure a lot of those are young men of color.
Yep.
But how did you realize that huge need? And then how did you get into this work?
Well, it really started through my friend and co-founder Cole Williams, who back in 2017 came to me with a question that he was trying to really process and understand. We had served together on a nonprofit board, and he reached out to me. And he said, and he works in the juvenile detention center. He works in residential treatment programs. And he is also a foster parent and a foster kid. And what he discovered was he was talking to his kids on a Friday afternoon or Friday and talking about successful men of color in the community that he sees on a regular basis. And the great things they're doing. And one of the kids in the class raised his hand and he said, well, that's great that you see that, Mr. Cole, but I don't see that in my community. And how am I supposed to become something I don't see?
Wow.
And when he heard that question, he couldn't answer it. He was kind of taken aback because it's a brilliant question. And it's a question that really applies to the Delta Project and the kids that we serve, but it really applies to everyone. We all have to ask that question. But ultimately, he thought about it and he called me up and said, hey, can we meet and talk about this? And we met back in kind of August of 2017, and he wanted to create a book that featured, successful men and I listened to him and I listened to the things that he wanted to do. I said, Cole, this is a movement. This is much bigger. And so I brought in another partner, Eric Johnson, and the three of us worked together to come up with this storytelling model that you saw in the video, where we go into the detention center on a Friday afternoon. We bring in all of the production equipment, really hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment, and we put it in the hands of the kids. And we teach them lighting, audio, behind the scenes, all the different positions that are needed in production. And then we teach one of the kids to conduct an interview. And then a week later, we go in, we set everything up, and we bring someone in from the community, a person of color that they wouldn't see, and we sit them down across from each other, and they have a conversation.
Wow.
And we capture that. We did 5 episodes, and then kind of COVID hit and things changed. We incorporated back in September of 2019. We got our 501c3 a little over a year ago, and we have been now understanding that storytelling work was kind of the tip of the iceberg. We realized that these kids, they're in these residential treatment programs, they're getting excellent treatment in, cognitive behavioral therapy, great work to kind of help them understand who they might be, but then they get sent home on probation. And everything changes because the stimuli changes. And they're back in the community. And, kids' brains don't fully develop till their mid-20s. And these 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, we expect them to navigate all of these different systems without the support often that they truly need. So, and anyway, they end up making a mistake, and, they might stay out past curfew, they might miss school, and they end up back in.
Some of them, and some of them make terminal mistakes. Some of them lose their lives.
Yes.
Some of them lose their lives. We have young men and young women as well, but right now we're talking about young men who show you with their own experience that it's natural to try to figure out who you are. It's natural to try to figure out how to grow up. And unfortunately, if you don't have examples of what you can be that are healthy, helpful, and productive to the community, then sometimes, more often than not, you become a product of your environment.
Yeah.
And so for that one mentor who pops into your life and he's the greatest guy you ever seen in your life, it's important to understand that when that mentor goes home, you're going back to a set of different options in your home environment. And a lot of young men, without having that example of who they could become, they're going to choose from what they see.
That's right.
And to be quite honest, it might be a drug dealer. It might be a gang member. It might be just a local vagrant. It might be, any old person who'll talk, and you never know who your child's talking to outside, but they need somebody to talk to. We have a trend in our communities of young men growing up without fathers, even young women growing up without fathers. So I'm not waxing poetic here. I'm talking about the reality. We've got to be able to be frank about the reality. We have a lack of an effective, positive, helpful role model, particularly Black male role model in our communities. And so when a young man asks, how do I become what I don't see? He's asking, how can I develop a vision for my future? How can I grow up to be you when you're clocking out? How can I grow up to be you when you're going to switch jobs next month? When I go home, I don't see it. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm in treatment. Ladies and gentlemen, I spent years of my life in foster care. I was adopted into a loving home, but the reality was always, how do I become a man? Think about this in your own lives, everybody. Who helped you to figure out how to become an adult? It must have been some other adult. You looked at other adults, and this is the question that they're answering today. Drop a 1 in the chat. Drop a fire emoji in the chat. Put the hands up like this in the chat if you understand that the work of the Delta Project is absolutely key, it's critical, it's powerful, and it's important. When you started to work with these young people, did you ask for the best behaved? Did you ask for the kids who didn't have any demerits on their record, or did you just take the kids who were willing to participate?
I mean, we took the kids that were in the treatment programs,
Right.
and at first we're like, I wasn't sure what to expect, but it turns out that these kids are incredible. They're so talented. They're amazing, but their narratives aren't being heard. We don't hear from them. We need to listen to them and understand what they're dealing with so that what we provide to them fits. We can't say, oh, we're going to come up with a solution and we're going to give that to you, and then you're going to, fit into that.
That's
we
right.
really need to know where they're coming from.
So,
these are the brightest, most talented kids I've ever seen.
So becoming an adult is a matter of your internal infrastructure. All the different things that make up that internal infrastructure: integrity, accountability, optimism, morality, all these sorts of things. I mean, you name it, numerous things make up the infrastructure of the positive and helpful adult. And we need to teach the young men how to build this infrastructure, or how to discover this infrastructure in themselves. They've got it, but they don't know it's there if you don't talk to them. If you don't walk up to a young man and say, hey, did you know that you are a skyscraper? Did you know that you are a skyscraper of greatness?
Yeah.
Take a survey. Ask a young person, when did they ever hear a motivational speaker? When did they ever have somebody pop into their life and tell them all the wonderful things about themselves? Or did they grow up with a whole lot of stricture and a whole lot of structure and a whole lot of do this and don't do that, and still they have an identity crisis? Sri McCarthy says, the Delta Project has answered the issues that we are having with at-risk young men and women. They opened the door to them. I truly admire what they have done. This is huge. This is phenomenal. The power of storytelling changes people. This is why our platform, America's Next Motivator, was born. This is what we're participating in here, y'all. We're moving into the age of storytelling. We're moving into the age of awareness of the power of telling your story. It doesn't matter if you're black, if you're white, no matter what your race is, tell your story. It doesn't matter if your life story was happy, positive, bad, terrible, or somewhere in between. Tell your story. Right. When we tell our stories, we take up space. That's the space that we need. We need the space to share our stories so that our young men and women can have rites of passage. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question, drop it in the chat. If you have a comment, drop it in the chat, because I'm riled up about this work here. I have another video that I found about the Delta Project, and I think that it speaks a lot to what we're talking about right now. And this is absolutely powerful. So I'm going to pull up this video. You guys blow the chat up. Let Joel know that we're in here tonight. And let's continue to have a conversation about what I'm getting ready to show you, because this is it. We have so many conversations about how to help the children, how to help the families, how to help the community. This is an answer right here. Check this out.
You asked me about my goals, and I wanted to ask, what are some of your goals? And then also, do you feel, well, let me just ask you, what are some of your goals? I don't want to keep, add layers on that question.
So for one, I want to cook. I love cooking.
Okay.
I got a scholarship for culinary arts at GRCC.
That's awesome.
And I also got a recommendation for a scholarship at Ferris State. So
that's where I graduated from.
Ferris.
Yeah. This is such a powerful experience for him right here.
So I'm just trying to figure out exactly how
and he wants it,
and how I'm gonna do things when I graduate high school, because it's my last year of high school.
That's right.
Okay.
Delta Project.
So that's what I want to do. I want to cook.
You said you got a scholarship, right?
Yeah.
What's there to think about?
Can you rephrase the question?
So I said you got a scholarship, right?
Oh. What's to think about is because
let's get some hearts and likes in the building, y'all. Blow the chat up. Hearts and likes in the building. Let's go. Share the video.
So, and also, I got a voice. I could be a motivational speaker. I could be a counselor. Like I said, I love talking about issues and figuring them out. Right. So I could be a counselor. I could be anything in that field.
Right.
Like my friends swear I could be a lawyer. Like they like, you try to negotiate your way out of any situation.
We need more brothers.
And so
yeah,
I'll be like, I don't see it, but at certain times I do. Certain times I see it. Like I did just talk my way out.
Can you see me?
Did. Yeah.
Be a part of this moment with me, y'all. Are y'all feeling this? Me? Let's go.
As a lawyer,
can you see me? Period. Right now,
yeah.
Can you see me? Okay. Just as well as you can see me through this lens, or just through what's talking right now, you can see yourself,
right,
as being a lawyer.
I honestly, I got a lot of things.
Pause, bro. You can see that. I can see it. Can you see it?
I can see it.
Okay. Just let that sit for a minute. Yourself as a lawyer.
See, but that stuff I ain't never really just thought about. Like,
now
maybe I should be a lawyer.
Think about it right now. Think about it.
Powerful. Absolutely powerful.
Yeah, every time I see that, it's just beautiful.
What did you think about how deliberate Cole was being in his communication with the young man, about how he kind of encouraged him to look at him, to look at the example that was before him, absorb the moment, and grow a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, that's Christopher Lovelady. That's not Cole, but I think what he's saying.
Okay, sorry. All right,
yeah, no, that's okay. You know, what I think is really powerful about the video, excuse me, is that aha moment that Decorius has. He realizes, wait a minute, I've got some innate talents that I'm not maybe paying attention to. Christopher helps him see. Just pause. Think about what you can truly become. See it. At that moment, Decorius sees it. That's why it's so powerful.
That's right. One of the biggest challenges in life is for us to develop a vision for our lives. In fact, I was having a barbershop conversation just this past week with a man who he's very talented, and I asked him what his vision was for his future, and he couldn't put it into words. And in fact, he said, "I'll get back to you on that." We live in a country where so many of us have not spoken about our vision for ourselves, our vision for the future. We're not prepared to really engage in the future. We don't have the words prepared about what we want to see happen next in our lives. And so for these young men to get that practice early on could be the difference maker between them, falling influence to somebody else who has an idea about where their life should go, and them being able to have an idea of where they want their own life to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's just believing in yourself, seeing that, understanding who you are. It often takes years to kind of figure out what we're going to become and who we're going to be.
That's right.
It took me most of my life to figure out, I felt like a few years ago, I made it.
Mm-hmm.
I became the person I was trying to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't happen overnight. There are lots of trials and tribulations to get there, but I got there.
That's
right. And I want other people to get there too.
That's right. Our young men out there deserve it. They deserve it so much. They've always deserved it. I could sit back and think about the hundreds of thousands of young men who needed these types of conversations, who needed these types of programs, but didn't have them.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm compelled inside of this hour on America's Next Motivator to appreciate that opportunity is here now for them. I want to encourage everybody out there watching to have a conversation with yourself first, but also have a conversation with a young person out there about their vision for themselves and a vision for their future. We got a comment in the building. Amy Graves says, I'm still trying to figure it out. Thank you for this conversation, Joel and Cedric. This is so huge.
Yeah.
She's an adult. She looks like an adult. This is the moment right here where we discover a gap in our development clear across America. Can you talk about your vision for the future? When did you start talking about your vision for your future? When? Some people can't remember it because they never had it. Some people can't talk about it because they've not had the practice. But when young men and women get an opportunity to start speaking this language at an early age, it's like throwing yourself an alley-oop.
Yeah.
It's like making a prediction in your future. And when you begin to make a prediction about your future, then there's some sort of accountability that comes along with that.
Absolutely.
Go ahead and make something up. I'm gonna have my own juice bar one day. I'm gonna have my own smoothie shop one day. The people who hear that, you like them because you're building a relationship with them. They're gonna say, "Hey, remember you said you were building a smoothie bar? Remember you said you were gonna start a juice bar?" And then it stimulates your ideas of what to do next.
Right. And I think what's so important is that we don't have to do it all at once.
That's right.
Do a little bit each day.
Yep.
That's what we've discovered with the Delta Project. It's such a big issue, and we can't tackle it all in one moment. But we do a little bit each day, and we've been doing that for a couple of years, and we've made incredible progress.
What do you say? What do you say to other people out there in the world who want to get more involved, but maybe they are a little bit afraid? They're afraid because maybe they had a great life. Maybe their life was great. Maybe they don't necessarily identify culturally, but they still want to make an impact. What do you say to them tonight, given the fact that you've co-founded a wonderful organization?
Well, understand who you are and understand how you can impact other people. I think the most important work we do is bringing others up, helping out, whether it's the youth, the people around us, inspiring people, not trying to convince people, but inspiring them to do good work and to be a good person who cares about those around them, that isn't just focused on themselves, but sees the role they play in the community. And I think if you want to go further, if you have an idea, do it. If you've got the means to do it, I think that sometimes it's a bigger risk not to take one.
Oh, okay. We're rounding third base here. I've had a wonderful time tonight. I am so into this conversation, the work that you're doing. It means a lot to me. Trust and believe. I'm going to shake the room up a little bit though before we get out of here. Does anyone look at you and say, you're a white guy so concerned about young black and brown kids? This is not your business. Have you ever felt that energy? And how do you deal with it?
Yeah. My partner Cole is black. I'm white. We move in different spaces.
Okay.
And I am very conscious of how I move in this space.
Okay.
And I realize that people may wonder, why am I so interested in this kind of work? What are my motivations and intentions? And all I can say is, I want to disrupt the system.
Ooh.
I want to create narrative change.
Wow.
I want the true stories to be told.
Mm.
And I want justice. And I want equity. And I want people to have meaning in their lives, no matter what, and to care for their fellow human being. We're humans.
That's right.
We need to embrace our humanity.
That's right.
There's so much technology around us. There are corporations pushing us to be efficient.
That's right.
But that can suck the life out of us.
That's right. We got 20 seconds left in the show. I'm so moved. I'm so moved at the things you just said. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here with us today. We got 3 questions for you. The first, what is survival to you? 20 seconds left.
Survival to me is being in this homeostasis, being in our space, and letting things move with us, being the water, being in the flow.
What is success to you?
Success is, small wins on a daily basis.
What is greatness? What is greatness to you?
Greatness happens when you're not looking for it.
Joel, I want to let you know that I've listened to your story today. I want to co-champion the reality that it's going to take everybody to help one another out. We're sitting at a really big table right now. And if you have it within you to grab one of those huge spoons and feed the person across from you, then so be it. I appreciate you today. We're giving you respect today while you're here to receive it. And ladies and gentlemen, put your crown emojis into the chat. Put your crown emojis into the chat because we're giving you a crown today while you're still alive to receive it. Ladies and gentlemen, put your crown emojis into the chat. We are letting you know, letting the world know that you, Joel Von Kuiken, you are America's next motivator.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. You got crowns coming into the building. Thanks for stopping by tonight, all right?
All right. Thank you, Cedric. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Each and every episode of America's Next Motivator is going to have something here for you. All you got to do, just like you did today, stop by and pick it up.